Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
I grew up in the Bronx, New York, also Queens, New York. Uh, Back and forth. My mother, she moved back and forth, uh, moving back with her parents when times got rough. I'm the oldest of three of us. The younger sister, the younger brother. Uh, my growing up, my life it started off pretty okay overall. Um, my father left when I was young, but he was always in my life. Wind up getting a stepfather that was really abusive, but even in that, it wasn't really too bad, you know. Always drugs and alcohol around around my household. Although I didn't start using right away, my first thing that I did, I started stealing at the age of 5. I would go in my mother's pocketbook, steal her money. Uh, in my classroom, I always had to sit in the front of the classroom because I was kind of didn't pay attention. And when my teacher would go to the back of the classroom, I would go in her pocketbook and steal her wallet. Go in the bathroom and trying to take her money out. And I remember the kids in the class snitching on me, and the teacher coming in the bathroom and catching me inside the wallet. Um, Stealing people's candy monies, kicking teachers, you know, and the and looking back in hindsight, I started to I learned that a lot of my behaviors just exacerbated the use of my addiction. It just made it much easier for me to start. And I think I probably took my first drink probably around 8 or 9 years old, going to visit my dad, a little Miller Nip, and taking sips off of that. My first experience with harder drugs was marijuana at the age of 11. I remember uh, being in the Bronx, hanging out with guys. Probably they were like 14 and 15, and I remember my first experience, Selwyn Avenue in the Bronx. Going upstairs to one of my neighbor's house. I think it was on his birthday, and I smoked some marijuana and ate some cookies and passed out. And from that point on, I used every day, um, except for a couple of stints when I was in jail, or I think that probably was the only time where I didn't use. When I was in jail or something like that, and even when I was in jail a few times, I participated in getting high. I think I smoked marijuana probably exclusively for the like from 11 to like probably 13, and that's when I started sniffing coke. I went to Catholic school. I played basketball. I was an athlete. I grew up in that Catholic school was a lot of Colombians, and that was like in the 80s, and they had like a lot of connections with cocaine, so they would come in the classroom, they would give us coke for
At
$10
13 years old,
at 13 years old. Yes,
in a Catholic school.
in a Catholic school. And in hindsight, also, like now that I have children, I think that it really starts at home, because even in Catholic school, we I look back on it and said the kids in Catholic school had more money to get drugs than the kids in public school. That's just how I saw it, because we would be in the classroom. They would have the little bottles, and we would just do it right in the classroom. The teacher, wouldn't know. We'd be sniffing right in the classroom, So I did that all through high school. But I was a pretty decent student, pretty decent athlete. Had scholarships to go play ball in college. You know, always told myself that I wouldn't need to sell drugs or whatever because I felt like that wasn't something that I really needed to do. I think when I turned probably like 14 or 15, my mother and father started smoking crack at that time. So I think, well, actually, I was just always reckless. At 9 years old, I would like not come home from school on Friday and just come back home on Sunday, and like my mother was really passive, so I would come back on Sunday, like so what, you know what I mean, and just go back to school. I never really got any discipline, you know what I mean.
Where would you be for
got,
2 days at that age?
at a friend's house. You know what I mean? Friend's house that I might have thought that was more comfortable or something like that. So we didn't have like a lot of the fixings, I probably didn't have a TV in my room or stuff like that. My friends, they would have TVs and radios in their room, so I thought it was more comfortable. Like I said, at that, I think around probably 13 or 14, that's when my mother started smoking crack. So it kind of, it went really sour from then. Because even and my addiction took off at the same point. So I remember living in houses with no heat and no lights, and all of us just sleeping in the floor in the living room, trying to keep warm and stuff like that. So I remember that happening more often, and and the house that I lived in turned into a crack house, because if you got somebody that smokes crack in your house, that's a crack house. You know what I mean? They're not gonna say, "Oh, I'm not gonna smoke here." So a lot of people came looking for my mom and using. My little brother's father had left. The one that was abusive, he had left for like probably like 7 or 8 years, and he came back and he had no legs and he was strung out on crack. So the house really, was really infested. And at this point, I was still going to high school. I was still playing ball and had scholarships to go play ball in college. And the addiction took off to where when I graduated, because I wound up graduating from high school, walking the stage, getting my diploma, but the addiction had took me off so much that I didn't even want to go to school anymore. And I wind up getting a job in the World Trade Center, and I was working in the mailroom there, and I was doing pretty good. I used to always see the guys that used to be hustling, but I was doing pretty good at my job, and I always said, "Oh, I ain't gonna get involved in that. But I was always cool with them. They'd be like, "Yo, what's up?" They'd see me going to work and stuff like that. And I think that probably lasted for probably like 6 months to a year after I got out of high school. And then when I had lost my job through use. I don't even remember the exact reason, but that's what it had to be. It had to be through my use. I don't know the specifics behind it, but to my use, I lost the job, and those guys that was always cool with me, they just let me, took me under their wing and just started letting me, rock with them. I lived in the crack house, so it was easy to sell my crack, and my thought process was always like banged up. So, I even sold crack to my mom's. You know what I mean? That was like part of my story, like how I got it. And she come with $4 and it cost $5. You couldn't get it. You know what I mean? No shorts, no nothing. It was periods of time, like I have a bunch of drugs in the house. If I'm in the street selling them, her and her boyfriends will rob me, stuff like that. We would get into arguments, and I remember after like selling for like maybe like, and this was back in the 80s, so it was like, like popping off. So it was like this big drug dealer just like took me under his wing, and we used to always drive around. I remember he had like a white Volvo, red leather seats and the telephones in his car. He always used to let me hang out with him, and it was like 4 or 5 in the morning one day. We was just driving around Queens, and he was like, "Have you ever tried this?" And I had always sniffed coke. I've been sniffing coke since I was like 12 or 13, but I had never tried crack. And I was like, nah, and I tried it. And just like mostly everything else I tried, once I tried it once, I was just hooked, you know what I mean? And then, you know, it was a time where I was getting money, but excuse me, once I tried that, it was downhill from then. You know, I was able to stay afloat maybe for maybe like 6 months or 8 months, but then after that it was just downhill. I was just using all the time, and coincidentally, the guy that introduced me to smoking crack, not too long after that, they found him dead on the highway in that car shot in the head.
Wow.
You know, yeah. So, but that ain't stopped me from doing that. I still stayed affiliated. I still stayed involved. I still participated in the lifestyle. Around that time, I got I got my first major arrest. Cause to backtrack, my first arrest was at age 8. I was hanging out with the older guys up in the stores, stealing in the department stores, and everybody got out except for me. And they brought me back to my house, and my stepfather whipped me, had me standing in the corner with my foot up, carrying a book, having me naked in the corner, you know, just like really humiliating things, you know. So that was my first arrest. Got another arrest when I was 11, you know, for some busting windows. My friend had a beef with somebody. It's like, yo, let's go bust their window. We busted one Friday, came back this Saturday and tried to bust it again, and the father came out and caught us. So that was my second arrest. And then my first drug arrest was probably around 17 years old, about 17 or 18. Wind up going to Rikers Island, scared to death. Bail $1,500. The dude that I was affiliated with, you know, wind up getting me out. And then from then it was just arrest after arrest and smoking and just like degradation, you know. It was like when I first started, it was guys that I used to give packages to, and after a while, the dudes that I was giving packages to, they got clean and they wind up giving me packages and, you know, treating me like a derelict. I remember one time being handcuffed to, I had a car in my driveway and I used to run off with people's money so much, but they still knew that I could get money. So what they did was handcuff me to the steering wheel in the car in my driveway. It couldn't move. And after I finished selling all this stuff, then they would unhandcuff me and pay me. And you know, so just like real degrading stuff like that, you know, coming from and not know and knowing that it wasn't really like good. Like I said, Catholic school coming up, you know. So I knew better. I had some kind of, and I think that was my saving grace, because through all of it, I always felt like, you know, this is not me. You know what I mean? And and that part of the using was the beginning of my crack addiction. And I say like probably that was like around 18 or 19. From 19 to 23, it was just using, jail. Never a prison bid. I'll do 8 months, get out, do 6 months, get out, do 90 days. You know, just a endless cycle. You know, just an endless cycle of drugs and using and degradation. I remember my last time in jail. I think I was stealing some hubcaps off of cars, because that's when I went back to the Bronx. I'm Puerto Rican, so it's stereotypical that we you know steal cars, but I was real low level, so I was just taking the parts off of cars and wind up getting caught and wind up having $1 bail and not being able to get out of jail for 13 days on $1 bail. Just calling people.
$1?
$1 bail. Calling people like, you know, my father, he was cracked out, but I called him, yo, you think you can help me? My grandmother hung up on me, people that really loved me, but they were tired of, you know, dealing with that type of situation. And after I was in there for 13 days, and the guy gave me, one of the COs gave me $1 to get out, and that was the last time that I was in there, you know. I ain't saying that that's the last time that I did anything, But it was really uncomfortable to make me kind of think, and it was getting closer and closer to the end of my run. You know, I did some other things. I remember going to Jamaica and having $500 to pay my ticket to get back home, and spending every dime of it and not knowing how I'm gonna get back home. You know what I mean? Being in Jamaica 4 o'clock in the morning, running around, not knowing anybody, and just, you know, trying to make moves like I'm back in the Bronx. You know, by the grace of God, wind up getting home still safe. You know, so I know there's always been a higher power looking at me. You know, looking over me. Those type of situations where I got shot. You know, when I got shot, I was in the house. I was supposed to stay in the house, and I didn't stay in the house, and they came around to try to shoot a guy that was standing next to me, and they wind up shooting me. And the thing about that is that 3 days later, when I'm riding out from the hospital, and the person I'm in the cab with, I'm like, yo, stop at the weed spot, because I got coke and crack at the house, so I want to get high. So I make him stop at the weed spot first, and I go home and I get high, and the next block I'm on the same spot where my blood is shedded, you know, right on the same corner, you know, on crutches, trying to get money. So, you know, high power been holding me down all along, you know. Because my clean day is October 3rd, 1991. So the last day when I was down, before I moved upstate New York, at the end of my run, what I would do every day, I would go out, I would wake up in the morning, I would get $5 worth of cans, you know, the blue receptacle cans that they have like the 5-cent cans.
Like soda cans?
Yeah, soda cans, water bottles, whatever I could get 5 cents with. I would get $5 worth of that. I would stop at the store, steal a loaf of bread and some butter. That would be my breakfast. I would stop at the crack spot. I would get a hit, and then I would wait for people to come knock on my door, because I lived in a crack house, you know, and that's what I did for the last months. I want to say probably the last 6 months of my addiction, 1991, from March all the way up until October 3rd, 1991. And
what happened October 3rd?
Well, actually, probably around October 1st or something like that. Let me backtrack. In September, I knew somebody that was in upstate New York, and they had went to treatment, and they never said, yo, you need to go to treatment, you need to do this. They never said that, you know. They just would come down to New York, and they were looking real spliffy, you know. So I asked them one day, yo, how, you know, what you doing? They said they in treatment, there's a lot of treatment upstate New York, So I was interested. They gave me some information. And I remember saying, I just want to stop this. And like, I think it was probably the next day after I said that, that's when Project Lift called me, and they was, you know, I remember my last day up there. I was in the crack house, and I just went crazy because I knew I was coming to treatment the next day. So I was taking people's wallets. I was taking the money out the wallet. They'd be on my back. I'd be just like, you know, just like mad fiend and like animalistic. And that next morning, I was sitting on the stairs, and I was waiting for my grandmother, God bless her soul, and she was coming to bring me to the bus station, and I was sitting on the stairs, and the front door was open, but the screen door was closed, and my father was inside, and he was like, oh, he ain't nothing but a crackhead, he'll be back in 2 weeks, you know. And I remember that, and I got on that bus. I had $5. I had a brown paper bag. I remember my grandmother watching the bus, making sure I don't jump off down the block and stuff like that. And I made it up to Albany. I came. Like I said, Project Lift accepted me into their program. I was 23 years old at the time. And I was coming straight from the crack house, and I was going to the halfway house. It was a difficult transition. I never knew anything about recovery meetings or any of that stuff. I never had any children at that point. Never had to be responsible for anything or anyone, not even myself. So went to Project Lift. It was a beautiful experience. One of the best experiences that I participated in my life. It helped me, it changed me, helped me grow, taught me like most of the things that I know today and that I live by. Most of the principles that I live by, I learned, at that place. Started to go to treatment, started to go to meetings. Fortunately, like a lot of people who I met at that point are still clean today. It showed me that I made a good decision. I feel like I made a good decision. My time in treatment, it wasn't all peaches and cream. I was a person that I still lived by crackhead rules, crackhead principles. I still was rowdy. I still was fighting. I still was stealing. I still was hanging out with people that was hustling, until one day I was driving around. I might have had like a year clean or a year and a half clean, and I was driving down low in my car so the people in recovery couldn't see me because I was hanging out with a drug dealer, and me and him was going to pick up money from crack houses. And then once again, the grace of God just was like, nah, this is not a good idea, and I stopped it. And that was one of my boys from the peanut butter and jelly days. And I that grace just came upon me, and I said, I can't do this no more. And like once again, like a month or two later, he wound up getting 15 years in prison, for doing what he was doing. Once again, I was saved by the grace. Most of the people that I grew up with from the peanut butter and jelly days, all of us that did the same things. My best friend from the peanut butter and jelly days, he got killed when we were like 18. My other dude that we played high school ball with, he wound up getting like 17 years in prison and getting deported to his country. So the grace has been covering me, because though for the first few years of my recovery, I did everything except for not use. That's the only thing that I didn't do. I didn't use, but all the other things I did, and eventually I got blessed with the grace, and I started buying into what the people in recovery were talking about.
What was the hardest part of initially getting sober, getting on that bus, or at that point did you had it?
Yeah, it was. I feel that's grace too, because for where I came from, because although like my story has drugs and stuff like that, like ball was my love. That was my love. I traveled over the country, as a young age, played in Madison Square Garden, played in the America West Stadium out in Arizona. Traveled the country to play ball. So that was like, I always had that type of love for that, and then to see myself in the garbage can getting cans out, and when I first started getting the cans out, I wouldn't go next door to my house. I would go like blocks away, 4 or 5 blocks probably in March. But by the time October came, next door was the first place that I went. I didn't care if my neighbors saw me. I didn't care about none of that. So I got kind of blessed to go to such a low that when I got up here, I couldn't really be in denial that I had a drug problem. I could be in denial about other things, like should I hang with my people from the peanut butter and jelly days? Should I be stealing? Should I do those things? But the thing about not using it wasn't up for debate. It was already kitchen tested. It wasn't nothing that I could really be in denial about that. I weighed 103 pounds. I had a pair of spandex shorts on. Spandex was supposed to fit, but they didn't fit, so I had a shoestring for a belt. That was like my outfit. You know what I mean? I had a pair of sneakers that had holes in the bottom all over, and the sneakers that I wore up here, they had holes. They had holes in the bottom. And I had to put plastic in them and newspaper. And those were my winter sneakers, my summer sneakers, I had stopped playing ball at that point. Maybe when I go to jail, do my little 90 days, I'll be playing ball like real heavy. But when I hit the streets, I wouldn't be playing any ball. So it was like the using part was like the easiest part to give up. It was just like the lifestyle, because I always wanted to go back to the Bronx and hang out with my people and stuff like that. And I didn't do that, but the devil was always at work. So since I didn't do that, he brought people up to Albany, and I just be walking down the street like minding my business, and I see one of my boys from the peanut butter and jelly days. He's like, "Yo, what you doing?" And I'm doing good. I'm in recovery. I got an apartment. I'm doing my thing. And I just couldn't leave the lifestyle. So I would let dudes stay in my house or whatever. Shack up. And I know they doing dirt, but I'm not doing dirt, but they are. And I wind up getting affiliated, and like I said, that I got grace, and I stopped it. Haven't done that yet. Participated back in that. That's a not yet for me.
How's your life changed since you become in recovery, and what would you say to somebody that's still suffering, still struggling?
The first thing I always say is that a person deserves to get clean and try a new way of life. They definitely deserve it. I think that's where people fall short, not recognizing, or not really recognizing, like how you always say, internalizing that they deserve it. You know what I mean? Internalizing that they deserve it, and then if they're struggling with it, I would tell them that. Not only are they worth it, it's worth the rewards that you get from getting to the other side. That's what makes it definitely worth it. And it's not like a job reward, or it's just like a spiritual reward, a spiritual type of advancement. The way that you feel spiritually about what you're doing. I think because I firmly believe that when a person is using drugs or alcohol, they're looking for a specific feeling. And the thing that I learned is that you can get that feeling from not using. You get that, and you get that feeling even 10 times, 10 times more. Like I said, crack house in the Bronx and Queens, and actually now I'm a certified alcohol substance abuse counselor. Traveled all over the world, did it sober. Appreciate life. I'm a good father. I'm a good fiance, I think. I'm a good son to my moms, because the same person that I sold crack to today, by the grace of God, she's not using, and we have a good relationship. Sadly, my little brother, coming up under me, he still uses. He's still in the lifestyle, but I have beliefs that one day when he's ready, I'll be here waiting for him. So I have no complaints. I appreciate like my whole story. I appreciate every part of it. From the beginning to the end. I appreciate every part of it. I think it's the whole story is important. I think if those things weren't part of my story, I wouldn't be where I am or who I am today.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.